Hello, hello, hello. This is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. And again, we come to you with another phenomenal guest. And this time we travel to the Midwest of the United States. We're talking about Chicago, aka Chi-Town. Now, if you guys never been to Illinois or Chicago, they're known for their beautiful buildings, but most of all, they're known for their amazing foods. So many different food varietals that you can go to. And we're going to be talking about food today, but we're also going to be talking about what it's like to have cancer recovery. What does that look like for you? A lot of times people go through treatments and everyone's there supporting them. And then the bells rang. And then what? Right? It's like, what do I do now? So, what does cancer recovery look like for you? Well, we're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss that because this individual that I'm bringing in today, she is a specialist on that. And we look forward to bringing you information that's going to benefit you on this cancer journey and beyond. So, with that being said, please let's give it a round of applause for Michelle Patidar. Huh? What's going on?
Yes, hello.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Look at that. You're and this smile, you guys, if you guys looking at my YouTube channel, you'll be able to see her. Her smile is radiating here in this podcast. She is just full of life. She's got like the whole feng shui meditative type style in the background. It's amazing. You did a good job with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, Michelle, I want to say thank you so much for joining us here on All Talk Oncology. And we want to get right into that. A lot of times patients come in, as I was just talking about, and it's like, what do they do now? Sometimes you feel lost after treatment, right? It's like, okay, the person who I was before treatment, like sometimes doesn't interest me anymore. The things that I was doing, I want to do something different. What does recovery look like in that? And then just what do I do for recovery? How do I live my life? And as far as nutrition is concerned, or decided to bring you on and talk a little bit more about that. So before I do that, let's talk a little bit about your background. Could you explain to our listeners who you are and what exactly that you do?
Sure, I would love to. So, I'm Michelle Patidar. I'm a 7-year cancer survivor. I'm also a certified integrative nutrition health coach. Um, and I am so excited to be here because I focus on cancer recovery. I founded Revival Health and Wellness, my business, and it's a platform for cancer preventers and survivors to come to. And it's important because cancer recovery is not as it's not it doesn't exist that much for people. There's not an entire support out there for cancer recovery, like you were saying earlier. So my platform is for people to come here and to understand how to recover, what to do. I focus on whole health, which means I address nutrition, but also the mind, body, and soul, because we all work as one. So we can't have one without the other. And then I also work with preventers to help, put off a cancer diagnosis, to help do whatever you can to help prevent disease to happen. And I help our survivors help prevent reoccurrence as much as possible going forward as well. So that's what I focus on through my business. I'm also a wife. I'm a mother. I have two toddler girls. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old that keep me on my toes and keep me very busy. And I am just so excited to be here and talk a little bit more about cancer recovery with you guys today.
Oh, we're excited to have you. I mean, that's quite a bit. You're a busy woman.
Yeah, it's been a fun few years.
Yeah. To throw the business aspect and a couple of kids and a husband and that right there, it's a full plate, 100%.
It sure is. It sure is. Finding that balance is key. And I ended up having both of my girls after my cancer diagnosis. So I truly feel blessed. I know how lucky I am to have been able to partake in that journey. So although busy, it's all just really wonderful things. So I feel like I'm in a good spot.
Yes. So before your diagnosis, Michelle, like what exactly was Michelle doing? Who was she? What was she doing? What was life like for you?
Kenny, I was living my best life, I thought, right? I was diagnosed at 32 years old, so very young. Um, I got married at 29, and a few short months after my wedding, my mom was diagnosed with a stage 4 stomach cancer, and she was given 6 weeks to live. Her cancer journey, it was so bad. The cancer was so bad. It was in her bones, in her spinal fluid, in her brain fluid. It progressed so fastly. So that's why they gave her 6 weeks to live. And at that time, my husband and I, we were newlyweds. We moved her in and we became her caregivers. That was my first experience, not only with cancer, but with any kind of disease. My genetic background, everything, I did not come from a family that had any kind of chronic illness, any cancer, anything like that. So becoming the caregiver to my mother at 30 years old was hands down the most stressful experience that I've ever been through in my entire life. To get a front row seat to cancer and what it can actually do to somebody and how it can deteriorate someone was not something I think I was prepared for or I even knew was possible. And, I became the parent very quickly. And my husband and I took on these roles that it was life or death situations. And so it was a very stressful period. She ended up making it 6 months before she passed away. And after she did pass, my husband and I were like, all right, we're gonna have a fresh start. We started to try to have a family. We went started going down that path, and I just wasn't getting pregnant. I couldn't. My body, what something was off, and I knew it was off. I just couldn't get pregnant. And I was seeing a fertility specialist here at Northwestern in Chicago, and they ended up ordering an MRI because they thought something could be off with my pituitary. And they ended up finding a pituitary tumor in the base of my brain. This was 6 months after my mom passed away. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, no way, blah, blah, blah. So they wanted me to get it removed right away. So within a week and a half, I flew to Boston. The person that invented this surgery actually was the person that did my surgery. And everything came out successfully, and it was a benign pituitary tumor. And it was quite a recovery process and everything like that. But I was like, all right, and it was creating this disease in my body. The pituitary tumor was. So after the surgery, I felt so good. I mean, my entire body changed. All these weird symptoms kind of went away, and I was like, okay, I can move forward. So we started trying to have a family again, and it still wasn't working. And I thought, this is just so stressful. And I know stress just fights against fertility, and everyone's telling you to relax. So it's like I remember a specific moment, and I was meditating, and I very vividly remember like just surrendering and telling myself, I'm just going to surrender to whatever is supposed to happen, and I have to accept it. I can't control this. And I remember just thinking like I just surrender to this next chapter of life and whatever it brings. Well, a couple weeks after that, it was right around my mom's 1 year anniversary, her death anniversary. I had a dream about her. And in my dream, my hair started falling out and all of these things started to happen. And she kind of started to walk me down the path. And I got very scared in my dream, very nervous, very tense. And I woke up and it felt like I pulled a muscle in my neck, like I must have, you know, jerked in my sleep or something like that. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so painful. I must have pulled a muscle. I went back for her memorial and then it just got worse and worse. So I went to my PCP and I remember like walking into the doctor's office and I said, just want to make sure I don't have cancer or anything. Just want to make sure I'm in the clear. Just says ingest, right? And she's like, oh, it's a pulled muscle. Don't worry about it, but let's do some preliminary blood work just to be sure. Meanwhile, I'm traveling, I'm going on girls' trips, I'm having fun, I'm working out 5 days a week, I'm eating as clean as I thought I was at that time, right? And just being a normal 31-year-old girl, newlywed, trying to get my life back after all of this trauma with my mom. And then my pituitary tumor. I remember I got off a plane from New Orleans and I got the call and she's like, There's a level that's elevated in your blood work that's associated with blood clots. She's like, it's not like very elevated, but this is very weird. And we have to make sure you don't have a blood clot in your lungs or something. You have to come in right now and get an x-ray. And I was like, that's weird. And it was very, very slightly elevated. And I was like, that's weird. So I went and got an x-ray done. It was a Saturday. And they actually ended up finding a huge tumor on my chest. It was leaning against my heart, 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. And I ended up having 4 blood clots in my left arm. I didn't have really any symptoms of the blood clots or anything like that. And when she saw the tumor, she was like, okay, we have to biopsy this and move forward. So that started my cancer journey. And I ended up being diagnosed with a stage 2 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I underwent 6 rounds of inpatient chemotherapy. So I was in the hospital for 5 days at a time. I was on a continuous drip of 6 different chemo drugs every 2 weeks for 6 rounds. And luckily enough, I feel very grateful that I did well with the chemo, and the chemo worked for my body, and it started to shrink my tumor and attack the cancer cells.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean,
Yeah.
Michelle, what a journey, right? I mean, you're going from being like a caretaker for your mom, like a caregiver, and handling that, being a newlywed and trying to start your family, going on girls trips and doing all these different things and having this dream, and then coming out like, oh my God, now my neck is like, it's bothering me. To come to find out, man, my goodness, you've been diagnosed here. What an emotional roller coaster, right? I mean,
Mhm.
especially for someone who's really just wanting to start a family, wanting to get a fresh start, because losing a loved one, I mean, that in itself is just an overwhelming feeling and just a loss, right? And so tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about that emotional roller coaster, because I think that's a part that a lot of times the patients feel that there's a disconnect uh, with everyone else. They're like, you just don't understand what I'm going through. So walk us through some of that emotional up and down that you were going through.
It was just the hardest period of my life. It was so emotional. I was so stuck in grief over my mom and trauma. Like I do think that because of the what I had to do for her, and I was technically acting almost as her nurse half the time. I was so traumatized by seeing what I saw, that I was so stuck in just grieving my mom and losing my mom. And I ended up seeing a therapist for grief. And here's how I know I do not believe in coincidences, but I continued to see her. And obviously, it was diagnosed, within a year after my mom passed away. My therapist was also a cancer survivor. So when I was diagnosed with cancer, she was like, shared that with me. And it just, again, I don't believe in coincidences. It was just such a blessing in disguise because I didn't know how to process it. And talk about an emotional roller coaster, because my only experience with cancer was death, was seeing my mom die. So when you get your own cancer diagnosis, how do you not go to the worst case scenario of, am I going to die? Am I going to go through all of this horrible stuff that my mom had to go through? Is that going to be my journey? And then it just almost felt like a sick joke. Like I just buried my mom and now I'm getting diagnosed. Like it just seemed so twisted in my head that it was too much to comprehend. And I think that as individuals, we process in our own way. And I processed it little by little as I was going through everything. And as you know, when you're going through bone marrow biopsies, MRIs, CTs, tumor biopsies, you have to wait a couple of weeks to get a lot of these results. So that waiting period for me was horrible. It was excruciating. I ended up having just severe anxiety. I was so scared about my future because I also knew in the back of my mind, where did this spread to? I know that if we can catch things in time, that is key. And I knew that from my mom's experience because she was so sick that we couldn't do anything about it. So in my head, it's like, well, how far did this travel? How did this happen? You start to have those questions, and you can also start to go through that emotional roller coaster of like shame and blame. Like, did I do this to myself? Or, was I eating something? You just start racking your mind, going through like, what could I have done differently? How did this happen at 32? And talk about feeling alone. Everyone, all of my friends and my support system around me was getting married, having babies, and starting or in the prime of their career. And I just got the wind taken out of me. Not only am I not having babies, and although I'm in my career, that didn't even matter at that time to me. It was life or death. And your priorities shift like this. Like, just in the split second, all you care about is your health. And what can I do to stop the bleeding? What can I do to stop all of this and get back to like who I was? So it was just, they always say that the like stages of grief come like a wave, they ebb and flow. And I remember through my diagnosis, like it was just, I was so mad. I was so angry. And I felt mad at like God and my spirituality too. Like, my mom just died. Now I didn't think that I could possibly take on any more, because taking care of my mom and the pituitary tumor took so much out of my emotional and mental capacity and strength to deal. So I just thought, how am I going to be able to mentally and emotionally move forward and handle this? And I remember right before I was diagnosed, when I went back to Michigan for my mom's memorial, my dad and I were taking a walk, and he was like, Michelle, just, I want you to move forward, put all this trauma behind you. And my neck was hurting. And I said, you know what, Dad, I just know it's not over. I go, something else is going to happen. I said, I just have this like overwhelming feeling that like this isn't over. This darkness isn't over. And he's like, no, you've just been through so much. You just have to give yourself a minute. And I said, and I just knew deep down in my gut, like, I didn't feel that peace that you feel when you're ready to move forward in something in life. So I, of course, was shocked by the diagnosis, like completely shocked. I never thought in a million years I would get cancer, ever. My mom was very into nutrition. We lived a very healthy lifestyle. And there was just so much emotional confusion around how could this possibly happen to me. And also, now looking back, a complete appreciation for that dream, because I didn't have any symptoms truly except for that neck pain. So if I didn't have that dream, it probably would have progressed so much faster, and I probably wouldn't have found it as quickly as I did at a stage 2, right? So it was a whirlwind of emotions throughout the entire process.
Oh my God. Yeah. I thank you for sharing that, because, a lot of times we don't get to see that part. You don't know what's going on with the individual and their thoughts and how they're processing it, and how that's making them feel. And so listening to that conversation about you and your father, and just not intuitively, like not being at peace, like, no, there's something else. And then understanding, my goodness, like everyone else around you, that could be a tough, right? To see everyone in their careers and doing their thing. You're like, well, I gotta battle this cancer now, right? I mean, it's like you talked about. Thank you for sharing that. The perspective of what's important, you
Yeah.
know. So as you go through these treatments, 6 rounds, did you tell me 6 rounds of chemo? And did you
Mhm.
receive radiation at all?
No, the tumor responded very well to chemo. It was a very like traditional chemo regimen from the 80s. It's very hard. I really lucked out. I had, an amazing oncologist that sat with me for almost 3 hours when I was first diagnosed and walked me through absolutely everything. She's so thorough. She's so amazing, and still, like, I consider her a friend. And she told me, Michelle, this is a very hard traditional chemo regimen, but you are young and you're healthy, and like your body can take it. She's like, your body can take it, and it's going to work. She's like, you're going to have your babies. I promise you. She's like, look at me. I promise you, we're going to get you there. You're going to have your babies. And I think about that so much, because, your care team, the support team that you have around you, their mindset means so much to somebody that's so vulnerable. And like, we don't know where to look or what to go when we're diagnosed with cancer. So our oncologist is our light. It's our North Star. We are leaning on you. This is life or death for us. So to hear my oncologist just be so confident and say, your body's going to handle this. We're going to do this. Like her positivity and reassurance gave me that strength that I needed to jumpstart my cancer journey and my process with it too.
Yes. My gosh. You know, one of the things that sometimes get overlooked during this process is the other half of that relationship, the spouse, right? And so
Hmm.
you're going through something like this, and he's there with you. He's going through this
Hmm.
journey with you. And I've heard it been said, if you have cancer, then I have cancer as the spouse because they're going through every single thing with you. It's as if they have that. Talk to us a little bit about how that affected, the relationship and him as a caregiver and how you saw, that support or whatnot.
Yeah, you know what? I'm so glad that you brought that up because my husband does not get enough credit. And I think the spouses and the partners do not get enough credit. My husband is a saint. When my mom was diagnosed, he was like, she's moving in with us. We're taking care of her. Because my parents were divorced. My mom didn't have anybody to lean on. And so his just it made it so much easier to take care of her because he was like, of course, like there's no question she's moving. Like there was so much support and love that it was so overwhelming, in a good way, right? And then when I was diagnosed, like, this poor guy, he didn't know what he was signing up for. When we said I do, and within a year, all of this stuff unfolded, he was like, what? Like, this is crazy. Like, are you like, what? But he rolled with it. He was so supportive and so amazing. He showed up for me every single day. He made me a celebratory meal every time I ended each round. Him and my dad stayed with me in the hospital every every single day of every single round. He would work from the hospital. His love and unconditional love was so, I don't take it for granted, but I couldn't have done any of this without him. I truly believe that all of this happened within a year, a few months of us getting married because I needed him to get through all of this. I couldn't do it by myself. He's truly the other half to my coin. Like he's my partner in everything. And with that being said, he had his own traumas going through this, right? He's still, when you're a caregiver, you are making decisions about somebody else's care. So him and I were making decisions about my mom's care, and there were so many decisions where we're like, are we doing the right thing? Is this what we should do? And still, like after she passed, he'd say, gosh, like maybe we should have done this or that. I'm like, we can't do that. We can't go back. We made the best decisions in the time that we had to make them. And, when I was going through my stuff, like after it ended, after all of my cancer journey ended, we were both just like, you're kind of just like left with in shock of all the trauma. And I said, you should really go and talk to somebody. Like you have seen me not only physically change from head to toe, but go through so much. And you've had to handle so much. And as a partner, and for him as a man, you guys are like, you want to take it all on. You want to make it all better. You guys are the fixers. And that's very much how he was. And he couldn't fix this. And so he kind of took it all in and like shoved it down. And then we had to do that. We had to have him process it as well as myself and unpack everything that we went through to really come on the other side of it. And it took a couple of years to really go through it, to really process everything. Um, and talk about what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. We are so strong from enduring such, adult things so young. A lot of people don't experience all of these things so young and so early in marriage. And, really cemented like our love, our relationship and our friendship and respect for each other. So it's really nice to see how everything has evolved from it. But it was a process for him as well.
100%.
Mhm.
And I want to give a shout out to all of the spouses that are right there with their partner. You know, it's not easy. Sometimes spouses get left out. So I want to recognize and take this moment to say thank you guys so much for being an amazing partner when it comes to being there right by your side, by your partner's side, and supporting them in the way that they best can. Because sometimes you can't think clearly when you are in the trenches. So it takes someone on the outside um, to try to help. So thank you for that. And also, the sad thing is that it doesn't always work this way where you have an amazing person who problem solves with you and is there with you. Some people,
Mhm.
it's a trigger for them. Your cancer is a trigger for them, and you see a lot of partners walk away, and
Mhm.
that's sad. So that's the reason. One, I want to always talk about it and find out, what are some things that you can do. And listening to what your husband was able to do to help you with your mother, to help you in your process, that's amazing. So thank you for sharing that part with us. So going in also, so here we go, right? You you were living your best life, taking girls trips, get diagnosed, and this thing happens. What was when the bell rang and you finished and everyone kind of disappeared, right? Because that's kind of how it happens. Everyone goes
Mhm.
back to doing what they're doing. How did you feel? And what did you do from that point on?
That's a wonderful question and such a great point. I say that all the time. When the bell rings, you think we're done with cancer. You think it's gone, that's it. I can wipe my hands clean and I don't have to deal with it anymore. And everybody disappears. Your medical team disappears. Every I don't want to say your support system, but a lot of your friends or family think, okay, she's all good now. They're all good now. The cancer's over, and they move forward. But the sad reality is that you ring the bell, cancer treatments are over, but an entire new chapter opens up, and that is cancer survivorship. Cancer survivorship is as hard as cancer treatments, almost harder because it's lifelong, and you have to now unpack everything you went through. So one thing my therapist told me when I was going through all my treatments, she was like, you know, you were like an athlete. It was like just get to each round, get through every round, stay mentally focused, get through it, like ring the bell. You know exactly what the next step is and you have a plan. Well, after cancer, you don't have that anymore. And when you come away from trauma and you start to settle in, you start to relax a little bit, everything that you pushed down or didn't process through cancer, because it's impossible to process everything at once, you'd have like a mental breakdown, starts to come up. And it comes up in very different ways. It comes up through depression sometimes, through anxiety, through PTSD, comes up through controlling aspects, or OCD tendencies. Um, then you start to realize, well, who am I now? I don't recognize the person. I still have no hair, no eyebrows, no eyelashes. I physically feel different. Um, the person I was before cancer treatments no longer exists at all. There's a grieving process that happens after cancer where you're just like kind of in this dreamlike state of like, did I just go through that? And like, where do I go? Where do I start? I'm exhausted. It's just a whirlwind of so many things. And for me personally, I struggled with anxiety. I struggled with fears of reoccurrence. I had PTSD. I was so nutritionally off because I was somebody that did not eat a lot throughout cancer. I was on a continuous IV. So I was on like 6 liquid chemos over and over. So I would get so full and so like filled up that I didn't want to eat. It was like the opposite effect for me. So my gut was completely destroyed. My medical team, as much as I love them, they're not taught to talk about how to take care of your gut while you're going through extreme medications in your body, right? I was on like 3 different antibiotics with my chemo, and no one ever told me maybe take a probiotic, or you could do some things to help facilitate your gut lining so it's not completely destroyed after treatments and this and that. So I was left with just like a shell of who I was. I didn't know who I was anymore. I had the anxiety, the PTSD. Every time I would eat food, it would just sit in my stomach. I couldn't digest it. I didn't have hunger pains. My entire gut was completely destroyed, which I didn't know at the time. And at the time, gut health was not the craze that it is now, right? It was, I would talk to my oncologist about it. I'm like, something's wrong with my stomach. Like, I don't get hunger pains when I eat. It's not breaking down the food. Like, this is weird. So just give it time. Your body's got to adjust. And it never did. And then I realized, well, I'm not absorbing the food and the nutrients that I am eating. So my fatigue was not getting any better. My chemo brain was not getting better. And I just was like, this is hell. Like, this is hell. Like, what do I do? I want somebody to tell me this is normal, do this, and that. So I went to like the nutritionist that was in the oncology department. And she's like, well, you're eating everything right. You know, you're doing everything right. So it looks good. Just keep on it. I'm like, okay. So then I started to see integrative nutritionists, and they didn't want to touch me because they're like, well, we don't know anything about chemo. We don't know anything like this. Like, the best thing you can do is like take supplements or do like an elimination diet, like cut out gluten and dairy. And I'm like, no, you're not listening. Like, it's not an intolerance. Like, I can't cut anything out. Like, no, like this has happened from cancer. So I felt like I was talking and it was just going on deaf ears and there was no support. And it really made me open my eyes, and I'm like, oh, where is the team? Where, if you break an arm, you go through surgery, you get occupational therapy, or you get some sort of therapy after, and an exit plan, and you know when to come back, you know what's going to happen, you know your side effects. Hell, I had to sign up on a 75-page document of all the chemo side effects. But now, what about all of the long-term effects? And what about now? Like, how am I supposed to navigate this? And I just thought it was so crazy that there was a gap in this medical system for cancer survivors, because we have just fought for our lives. We have walked through hell. We should have that support. Why don't we? And I was really frustrated and angry about it too, because it was just like another thing I had to like figure out by myself and be mentally strong for. Because that's what I ended up doing. I ended up researching and figuring out about gut health. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should take digestive enzymes and this. And I just started to piece together my own health, and it started to help. So I was like, okay, and I became very passionate about it. So that's when I went to IIN, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and I got certified in integrative nutrition health coach, as an integrative nutrition health coach. And their program was so wonderful because although it wasn't like cancer recovery focused, it's health focused, it's nutrition focused, half of it. The other half of it is how the whole body is connected, how you can have nutrition, but if you do not have your mind and your spirit in the same place, the nutrition part can only go so far. So the whole program really focused on how to combine stress, lifestyle, relationships, your joy, your purpose, how all of that affects nutrition, and how the mind, the gut, the body, everything is so connected. And it just blew my eye. Like, I couldn't believe it. It completely opened my eyes to this whole other chapter of health. And I was like, every cancer survivor is now that I know this, every cancer survivor that I've been coaching and everything, we all experience like the same similar 6, 7 things or whatever. So why not have a program to help support people as they recover? Because you feel so isolated. I had no one to turn to. My friends are, again, having babies, traveling, doing all the things. And I'm like, I'm trying to eat a bite of food and have it digest. Like, we're on 2 different, playing levels right now.
Right.
I just would like to, get to a good place where, and I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So it was really isolating, and you can feel really alone in it. And I can imagine, we're all getting diagnosed with cancer younger and younger. All of my clients are younger than me. And you can feel very isolated and you feel like it's just happening to you. And it's really like, because of my experience and my struggle through all of it, mentally, emotionally, and through nutrition, I thought I think that like I got through cancer. My purpose here is to help other survivors. No one should ever have to feel how I felt after cancer. It's unfair.
Yes.
everyone deserves that support to be able to live their best life because we just made it through such an enormous amount of trauma. And that's what I try to do. I'm trying to support and help people as much as possible as they recover and set them up for success in cancer survivorship and help prevent a reoccurrence and learn how to live. And you don't have to be caught in that survivor mode all the time.
Yes. Wow, that is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, for you to just, because it stops there. How many people have it has it stopped? Just they just dealt with it and they haven't taken it a step further. I can tell you, being in here for a couple of decades in this cancer industry, a lot of people.
Yeah.
But for you, it was like, no, I need to find the missing pieces to this puzzle. And you went further and learning more about, guess what? We need to learn how to clean our gut. We need to learn how cancer recovery is and some of the things that we can do because this doesn't exist at this moment, right? It's not
Mhm.
out here. It's not mainstream or enough where people can go and find it. So, one, thank you for doing that, right? I mean, I sometimes we do things just because that's our personality, but we don't pause and thank ourselves. And so I'm going to pause and say, thank you, Michelle, for taking the extra steps to be able to help other individuals who are going through the things that you've gone through and
That means
helping
so
them.
much. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. And so cancer recovery, survivorship, it's a thing. And if you're feeling like, oh my God, what do I do next? Then you want to reach out to Michelle. Michelle is someone who has taken the steps to educate herself, get certified, and can help you along that journey. And this is what we're talking about. We want to make sure you have all the resources you need in order that you can be successful on your cancer journey. So, Michelle, thank you so much for that. And so, as we wrap this up, I want to say, how has this journey that you've been on, even starting with your mother, right? I mean, as a
Mhm.
caretaker, going into being the actual person, finishing treatments, and now being a wellness coach that's helping individuals recovery. How has this changed your purpose, your view, and your perspective on life?
It's changed it in such a dramatic way. And it's been my own journey. With 7 years cancer free, it's ebbed and flowed, right? I've had my own cancer scares. I've had my own traumas that I've still have had to deal with, and my level of knowledge of health has changed and evolved so much. What I knew 7 years ago, oh, what I know now, it's like it's amazing. I'm so grateful to like I love to learn and I love to teach other people. And I'm so grateful to be in this space to be able to continue to learn and teach and facilitate and coach, right? But I'm so fulfilled by it because I think at the very core of who I am, I love to help people. I always have. This is fulfilling and such it's selfish because it fulfills me so much to help other people, but it's such an area where people need help and support. And when I have like new clients and I do like the intro calls with them and I hear their stories and I see how much they're hurting and suffering, I just know this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And I will say this, when I was done with cancer, I told my entire family and all my friends, I don't want to talk about cancer ever again for the rest of my life. I don't want to be associated with it. I don't want people to pity me. Nobody that I worked with knew that I had cancer. I was working the whole time. I had like 20 something employees reporting into me. No one knew I had cancer. Like, I don't want the pity. I don't want to be the poster child for cancer. I don't want any of the attention. Now I'm like the poster child for cancer recovery. So it's funny how that works. When you think that you're done with it, you realize, well, maybe I got through this to help other people. Maybe this is my purpose. And when I was done with cancer, I knew like I couldn't go back to the corporate world. I was burnt out. I was done. I was like, that is not fulfilling me in any way. And I feel grateful because my husband was like, let's do it. Let's do what you think that you're supposed to do, because I'm like, I really think, my life was spared to help people and to develop these programs. And I feel very grateful to be able to do that because um, cancer rates are rising. People are getting sicker and sicker. We are so polluted and contaminated in our world that we need to wake up a little bit more and become aware of what we can control at the end of the day. We cannot control so much, okay? But we can control some things. And the things that we can control are so important. So the more that I can spread that message and just inform people, I feel like I'm doing my part to help prevent and to help people recover. So I feel like it's changed who I am as a person. You know, my relationships have changed. You know, my personal goals, what I do, how I hang out with people, everything. You know, how I eat is very different than a lot of people out there. And so it's kind of like you're either on board or you're not. Like these are my health goals for a specific reason, and that's not something I'm willing to compromise on. So it's forced me to create heavy boundaries to realize, you know, what kind of relationships I want in my life, what support really looks like, who really shows up for you. It's also opened my eyes as a mom because what I feed my kids and how my kids see me and my husband, they will model that. Our lifestyle choices become their lifestyle choices. So I'm now a role model to two people that I want to protect and foster as much as possible in their own health journeys. So it's really interesting how it changes year to year, and I learn more year to year, and I feel just, you know, we never want to stop learning. We've never reached it all. So I just feel very lucky to be surrounded with the right people, with like-minded people, to meet people such as yourself that want to spread the word, create awareness, and help other people. Like it's just the best feeling in the entire world. And I think every cancer preventer and survivor deserves it.
Yes. My God. So well said, Shell. I mean, thank you. Thank you so much for being who you are. Thank you so much for your resilience to bounce back and be not only just bounce back, but create programs for individuals out here so that they can be successful in their cancer journey. So thank you so much for joining us here on All Talk Oncology. It's a blessing to have you. And for those that are looking for life after cancer, recovery, survivorship, and want to know more about it, please, you'll find Michelle's information on our website. You'll be able to click her podcast and learn more about it. And so we're going to do our best to make sure that she is accessible and you can find her. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us here on I'll Talk Oncology today. And
Thank you so much. I had so much fun. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
for sure. And before we let you go, we always ask, is there something that you want the listeners to know and to walk away with?
You know, obviously, I've listened to your podcast, so I don't want to mimic you, but one of the things I always tell people is you're not alone. And what you're experiencing and feeling, you are not alone. And you have every right to feel that way. And also that you deserve a full life after cancer. So don't let cancer steal your future. It already stole your past. Don't let it steal your future. You can make a change and do something about it to start feeling better.
Boom. There it is. Well said. And thank you again, Michelle, for joining us here at All Talk Oncology. And if you guys are going through something like this and going through where you feel lost and scared or don't know what to do, and life is like, what do I do now? A sense of purpose, by all means, you know, you can find Michelle, you can find me, and we'll make sure you get to the right place so that you can be happy, find that joy, and find that new purpose sometimes, right? As I always say, you're not alone in this. We're in this together. This is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. And until again, I'm out.
So stay connected with us on All Talk Oncology Cancer Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that, right? Wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's Apple, Spotify, make sure you subscribe and continue to spread that word, right? Engage in this because your engagement can help someone stay alive. And this is what we're talking about. So again, make sure you subscribe, hit that subscribe button. Again, this is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. Until again, I'm out.